Hello, in this video I'm going to go through the process of making a console app. There's nothing particularly hard about this except that the fact that the main method is static sometimes causes problems for people, and let's go take a look at what problems that would be and how we can work around it. So here I am in my solution file, and I'm just going to go add a new project, and I'm going to make it a .NET console application. So console app right there. And I'm going to call this thing, MinMax. This is, you'll see what this does. It's not super complicated. It's just going to keep track of the highest and lowest numbers that I enter here. So what causes problems for people is the word static right here. Static means that there is one shared copy of something, but with respect to functions, it means that it's not bound to a particular instance of an object. And that makes sense for main because it's the first thing that gets called before any objects get made. So it can't be an instance method. It has to be static. So that's why main is static, because main has to be called before any objects have been created. So it can't be an instance method. Now, the problem is static functions can only call other static functions. Static functions can't call instance methods because static functions don't have an instance to work on. So how do we get around that? So let me make a simple program here. I'm just going to say, while true console.writeLine write line, enter a number, and then I will read in an integer. Let's see, have string s equals console.readLine. Now that string needs to be converted to an integer. So I will say, well, let's check to see if s is blank, right? If s is empty or s is null, let's just break out of the loop, right? So we're done. And then we need to convert that to an integer. So I'll make an integer called x, and I'll say that that's equal to convert.toInt32 our string. So take our string, throw it into the convert.toInt32 function, and that will return us an integer. All right, so what do we do with that integer? Well, let's make a variable called min, and we'll set it to, I don't know, 999 or something. And let's make a variable called max, and we'll set that to, I don't know, -999. And my semicolons. Now those are underlined because it says, hey, you created these things, but you haven't used them yet. So it's just warning you that you've declared a variable unnecessarily. So then what we'll do, we'll say if x is less than the minimum value, then the minimum value is now x. Now let me just because I'm flying through this, if I type if and hit tab twice, the environment will stub out an if statement for me, which is very nice. If x is greater than max equals x, right? So if the number that was input is lower than the minimum one so far, well, now that's the minimum one. If the number that was input is bigger than the maximum so far, well, now that's the maximum one. And it'll just keep running along like that until eventually we hit, we enter a blank line, and then we'll break out of the loop. So break means jump all the way down to here. And then we can write out console.writeLine, the max was, and then I'll put in the symbol for a placeholder, and x. And why is that not happy? Console.writeLine. Oh, I think I put it in the wrong place. Sorry, off by 1. There we go. And the minimum was, no. Max min. So this curly braces 0 means this is a placeholder for the first thing, and this is the first thing. This is a placeholder for the first thing. That is the first thing. And now, if I run this, what will happen is the command console will pop up, and I'll be able to enter numbers, but then it'll close. And what I want to do is hold the output, or hold the console open. And I'm just going to say console.read key. So it's just going to sit there waiting for me to press a key. So what that does is it's just going to go around and around and around until I enter a blank line. Then it breaks out of the while loop. Then it's going to come down here and do this. This will be fine. There's nothing really wrong with this because I've got all of this in one function. However, let's look at how to make this more sophisticated. So I'm going to use my debugger to walk through this. I'm going to click on the first line and I'm going to hit F9 there, and that's how I got my breakpoint. And now I'm going to hit the start button. And let's just walk through this and see what we do here. Oh, you know what did I do? I forgot to set the startup project. So if I go to my MinMax project over here in the Solution Explorer, I need to right click on that and say set that as the startup project. So there we go. So I went to set as startup project. That's what we want. So we're going to click that button. That's the project that starts up. And now, okay, so I set min and max to their respective values, and as long as this is a lazy loop that'll just run forever until I break out of it. So let's see what happens. We put a breakpoint on that line too, and I'll keep running. Enter a number, and I'll say 10. Okay, so S was 10 in quotation marks. It's the character representation of the number 10. But if I want to do a numeric comparison, I've got to convert it to an integer. So was it an empty string or was it null? Then break out of the loop because I'm done. Otherwise, convert this thing to an integer. And let's see. So now x is now 10, right? But that's the number 10, right? It's not the character representation of 10. And now I can say, was it bigger or whatever. And I'll just keep going around like that, around and around and around until I eventually enter a blank line. 999. And let me click on that breakpoint to disable it. And negative 100, 5, 90, 90, okay. And then if I enter a blank line, you can see I broke out of the loop to those last lines, and now it's stuck here on console.read key. So that's where it's hanging right now. It's holding the console over and open until I hit a key. So now it's done. Now, what if you wanted to write a console application that was just anything more than, just a little bit more than this trivial? Well, you'd have to break it up into functions. So you might think that you could do something like this. Void run, and just put all the code down there, and then in my main function say run. Nope, run. Why is it doing that? Now, let's look at what's going on here. An object reference is required for the non-static field method or property program.run. So what's going on here is I have a static function that is trying to call a non-static function or an instance function. And that doesn't work because I'm not in an instance here. Static functions don't have an instance to apply to. Now, some people will come down here and they'll just say, okay, fine, I'll make everything static. I'll do that. Don't do that. That's horrible. That's lazy. Don't do that. Here's the much easier way to do that. Our class here is called program. Let's just make a new program. Program P equals new program. There, I've made a new program, and now I have an instance. This is an instance of a program right here. Now I can call that object's run function. That is what you want to do. Your main function should just create a new program and run it. You should not really have any logic here in your main function. So that's and now we can run this again. Let's just step through the debugger, and okay, so now I've made a new program. I'm going to hit F11 to step into this, and okay, there's nothing there to step into. And now I'm going to go to the run function, but what object does this apply to? It applies to the P object that I created up in my main function, right? So this is all now applying to object P. And that's it. So that's the trick. Don't make everything static. Don't put everything in main. In your main function, you want to create a new program object and then call that program's whatever function in that object kicks off all the processing. So that's what you want to do. And this applies to any time you make a console application. These are the steps you want to follow. So there you go. Hope that was somewhat helpful, and will get you out of that. How do I that static, non-static thing, and now you'll be able to write console apps, no problem.